Hey there, I am back with another deck review, and today I'm going to be looking at Culturae Animalis from artist Jack Brutus Penny. Culturae Animalis means the cultural animal, and the deck itself really comes from an inspiration or a mixture of cultures of the world mixed with animals. There's a lot of other things that Jack strived to do throughout this project, and one of the big things is to kind of fulfill his mission as an environmentally friendly artist and company. What that means in terms of a deck of cards is he did everything from sourcing, sustainable forestry practices for the paper, soy-based inks, but even went so far as to say the packaging they use. So like the bubble wrap is a sugar cane derived bubble wrap. He used washi paper for the stickers and seals that you see throughout this. So a lot of different elements. And in addition to that, the Kickstarter campaign that accompanied the release of this deck was also inclusive of stretch goals that would donate to animal rescue funds, would be used to adopt different animals as part of it. So it's a very all-inclusive look at how he could really incorporate aspects of his mission to be environmentally friendly into the creation of this really beautiful deck of cards. And then, of course, there's the design inspiration, which looks at culture and animals put together. So let's go a little bit more into the deck itself and find out what that means and how that comes to life in this just really beautiful art deck. So I'm going to start with the front of the tuck. It is beautifully done in this just absolutely immersive design all the way through. It's kind of got these, you can almost see like grayish blue hues back here in the background, but then it's covered with an entire layer of gold and gold foiling to create this kind of natural design all the way through. Floral, vines, trees, almost like a forest exploded, and it goes all the way around the deck. Just really beautifully done. Almost the whole thing is printed in this beautiful pattern. And then you just have little elements peeking out. So you've got Culturae Animalis, you have Jack Brutus Penny's logo there in the center, man walking a dog. And then you have a Japanese style artist stamp done here at the bottom. That's really Jack Brutus Penny's name, but done as a Japanese style stamp. No other words or anything printed on the sides or the back, but you do have a little bit of ad copy on the bottom for the Expert Playing Card Company. So printed in China by Expert Playing Card Company. And then you have the postage stamp style seal here. It's Jack's logo done with the city in the background. It says Culturae Animalis across the top. And then at the bottom, it is numbered out of 1,000. So it's a limited deck, 33 out of 1,000. It's my edition. Have a little bit of a back design of the cards here, but we'll look more at that in a second. That pattern continues on the inner flaps. And then you have gold foiling as you open up the deck. So you have a gold foiled interior. And then as you go further into the deck, you've got more of that forest imagery printed all the way down the interior of the tuck case. You've got in and out, just really beautiful printing. That's a very, very thick stock to the case, so a very sturdy case overall, and just really stunningly done. So love this from the tuck case. We'll see if the cards live up. So as you pull these out, first thing you're going to see is that they are a full gilded deck. Beautiful gold gilding on the decks themselves. You can see a little bit of that reflection in there, so a little bit more of a mirror finish to this one. They are going to stick together a little bit because of the gilding, but let's take a deeper look at them. So we're going to start with the back design of the cards. So we'll start looking at that. And here it is. So it's going to be the same pattern we looked at before, obviously not done with that gold foil, but done with gold ink. And you have this, again, flowers, trees, leaves, a little bit more blue to the background here. So you kind of have that blue gray pattern in the back, and then the gold coloring layered on top. And here's a little bit of a look at some of the detail of the work that's gone into this. Now in the very center, you're going to see Jack's logo is kind of folded into the center there, the man walking a dog. Everything explodes out from that center. It is a one-way back design, not only because that center logo is one way, but also there's some hidden elements in the corner where he kind of works in the animals and gives you a hint of the animals that we're going to see throughout the deck as well in the four corners. A little bit hard to see. Symbolically, they're folded into the forestry. It's a symbol of how animals have to hide into nature and kind of have to burrow in and hide within overall nature in order to survive as humans spread throughout the earth. So kind of a symbolic piece that he put in there. But in the corners here, you're going to see there's the bird and owl sitting on one side. On this side, you've got a rabbit. You can see his ears up here, his face right there, and then his tail coming up on this side. As you go down to this corner, you have a cat. You can see the two ears up on this side, and then he's curled up there. And then on this side, you've got a large dog. So you have the hind legs over here, forelegs, and you can see his head kind of looking up in this direction. So you got that beautiful dog. Love the how subtly these are put in there. I think, when I first look at it, it almost comes across like it's still a two-way back design, but it's not. And those are really just beautifully folded into that overall imagery. Full bleed, so no border on the cards themselves. It's a full edge back design as well. Now looking at the two jokers, and here they are. Now you're going to get a sense of how he's going to use those animals throughout the deck. And they're really done in poses where they kind of put them into the middle of different cultures. And you'll see the 4 different animals here representing 4 different cultures of the world. So talk a little bit about those in the context of these jokers. So over here you have the cats. You can see the cat's face right there. And he's representing the Asian cultures. He's going to appear on the diamond suits. So you can see him there playing a drum. Behind that Jack, or behind the diamond cat, you have now the jester playing a flute, and it's actually a rabbit. This is going to represent the European and English cultures of kind of the Renaissance era. So you got the classic Joker back there as a rabbit. Over here you have, in the foreground, you have a bird, almost like a pigeon looking, but kind of posed there. That's going to be representative of the hearts, and it's going to be a look at Arabic nomadic cultures throughout time. We'll go more into kind of pattern work throughout that. And then behind that is going to be a dog representing the Aboriginal cultures of the world. The Aboriginal cultures, as we go through the clubs, are going to look at things like Native Americans, Australian Aboriginals, etc. So there are the 4 different animals that we're going to see featured. Now, one of the cool little feedback things that got added on during the Kickstarter, somebody was looking at the design of the Jokers and said, hey, there's a lot of games that kind of differentiate between the quote good Joker and the bad Joker. Could you maybe mix it up and make it a little bit more distinct from one Joker to the other? A couple people on the comments had never heard of that, asked what it was. And what it is there's some games that refer to like the Joker and the Fool. So you have the 2 different Jokers. The Joker is actually the best card in the game, and the Fool is the worst card in the game. Oh, interesting concept. Said, hey, could you maybe mix that in somehow? Well, rather than changing the original Jokers, Jack ended up adding a 3rd Joker, the Fool card. Now, at the same time, he was adding a stretch goal where, by reaching a certain level, he would use some of the funds from the Kickstarter to adopt a lobster. So interesting little stretch goal there. And so he turned the Fool card into the lobster card. You see down here, it says the Fool crossed out. You got lobster written over here. And then you have a beautiful scene drawn on here. Started out as a man on a cliff, but the man's obviously been replaced with a lobster head. You got the dog nipping at his heels, and you can see that drawn in lobster up there, really beautifully done with those swirling clouds in the background. So kind of a fun little addition to how that made its way in. You have his logo makes an appearance up here at the top. And then you have some ad copy about the deck and about Jack, including his logo, www.jackbrutuspenny.com, mentioned here on the sides. They're really beautiful. Love the inspiration and the story behind this card as well. Now let's get into the cards themselves. Now I mentioned each suit is going to represent a different culture and a different animal. So starting with the spades, we're going to go into the European culture. So now we're going to go back into Renaissance times, castles, knights, jesters, kings and queens. And the animal of choice, as a reminder on this one, is going to be the rabbits throughout this one. So starting with the ace, each of the aces is going to start with a castle in the style of the culture that the suit is inspired by. So this is going to be a medieval castle, very classical, with the drawbridge or the bridge across the front, and then the banners flying, this beautifully done castle drawn in the back. So So there is the ace of spades. You have a very large A and a smaller spade pip in the corner as well. As you go into the number cards, you're not going to have any classic pips in the center. This is not a transformation deck or anything like that. You will have the 2 of spades denoted in the corner, but the rest of the card is going to be dedicated to a full bleed image that includes a rabbit. So it's going to be a Renaissance inspired image. Some of the images throughout the deck are going to be completely original. Some of them are going to be more inspired or transformations of famous works. But for these, he went into, medieval art, Renaissance art, and kind of pulled different pieces in here. So you'll see a lot of knight imagery and things like that. Really beautifully done. Obviously, all of the characters are going to be replaced by rabbits throughout. And I'll go through this quickly so you can see a sense of some of the art. But it's really beautiful, fun, and every single card is really unique, both in its coloring, its style, everything. And they're all going to be kind of this monochromatic color, but you get a lot of different shadings from the different grays throughout this. There's one that kind of reminds me of like a Joan of Arc kind of look to it. There's that. This guy playing a lute on that one, or a rabbit playing a lute, I should say. Beautifully done on the 10. And then the courts are going to do something a little bit different. The courts are going to feature the same idea of different characters, but they turn it into a triptych scene. So you do get a full court, if you will, kind of the royal court represented here, from the knight bowing on this side. You have part of the court here, and then you have the king on his throne. But the triptych means that all 3 cards can be combined to form a single scene. They're really beautifully done on this one. Love that look, love that touch on this thing. So there are these spades. Now as we go into the diamonds, now we're going to go into Asian culture. And so we're going to see Chinese, Japanese imagery. For the most part, the art style throughout the diamonds is inspired by ukiyo-e, which is Japanese wood blocks. So if you've seen those, you'll probably recognize the style as we go through this one. So starting with the castle on the ace card. So you have the Japanese style castle with the mountain in the background. Maybe that's Mount Fuji. And it's beautifully reflected on the lake below to form almost a 2-way image going here. All the inks have now been switched out for different shades of red to differentiate it from the clubs and spade cards. And then as we go through this one, now we're going to go through Asian culture, but with cats. So you've got the cat images in these beautifully drawn cards throughout this one. So you've got, samurai, geisha, all throughout this featured on the diamonds. Beautifully done. Again, I mentioned some of these are going to be done, as original pieces of art, and some of them are going to be more inspired. Here's one of my favorite ones, that 7 of diamonds with the cat with the large fish arcing over him. The 8 of diamonds, though, for example, is actually a reimagining of a piece of woodblock art from an artist named Kuniyoshi. Back in, I believe it was the 1800s, but he had a famous piece of artwork that featured a man or a samurai fighting an octopus. So now we have a cat samurai fighting that same octopus in the same pose and same style as the original piece of artwork. A really beautiful flowing motion on this one. And then through the 9 and the 10. And then quick look, of course, at that triptych design for the court here. So now you have an Asian style court with the king on his throne on the right, and then the samurai warrior is the jack on the left. So there's that triptych scene. Love that. Now let's go into the clubs. And then the clubs are going to look at indigenous tribes of the world. So Australian Aboriginals, Native Americans are all going to be inspirations behind these. For the animal of choice, we're going to go into dogs throughout this one. So you're going to see dogs featured throughout. But we'll start with the simpler, I'll call it the palace or buildings of some of those indigenous tribes. So here you'll see kind of an ocean side with those homes up on large stilts to raise them above the levels of the tides. You've got large dragonflies going all around. You have the boats in the water for the fishermen, etc. So nicely done on that one. And then you'll see different Aboriginal tribes, going in with the dogs on these. So they're very fun, beautiful images on these as well. So this one is actually one that was inspired by a postcard of an Aboriginal man, older photograph of an Aboriginal man in Australia holding a shield and a spear. So now you've got the Dalmatian there holding that one. Another one of my favorite cards in the deck. Another really good one there. Got a guy fighting a crocodile. Bulldog there. And then, of course, no suit would be complete in this deck without getting a chance to look at the triptych imagery of the different dogs forming an Aboriginal court. Beautifully done. Love the patterning on the queen there. So there are the clubs. And last but not least is the hearts. So now we're gonna go into the Middle East. So thinking like the Arabic or other nomadic tribes throughout the Middle East. Here we have a very Taj Mahal inspired image of an Arabic palace in the background reflected on the pool in front of it. Really beautifully designed and all the detail that went into those spires throughout. So it looks a lot like the Taj Mahal. And then you get into Arabic warriors and other Arabic characters throughout. So you got those large curved blades. He does a lot of looks, you know, in the Arabic, and kind of what distinguishes this one is a lot of a deeper look at different highly detailed patterns that you'll see in, you know, Arabic clothing and art throughout that period. So you'll see a lot more detailed and interesting patterns going throughout here. Obviously now all the characters have been replaced with birds. So now birds, or the uncaged bird, is now the inspiration behind this one. But really beautiful. Love the patterns on this one. And then you've got kind of a sultan or a guard, not sure what that is, sitting there with his turban. There's a nice look at one of those birds, an owl. Here you go, a series of birds kind of on their horses with their spears going out to battle. And then, of course, you have your court. And here it is. So you've got the sultan, I guess you would say, sitting on his throne on the right, all the way down to the warrior on the left, all as birds. And then the swan in the center. So really just wonderfully illustrated imagery, full bleed back design, no borders front or back throughout this one. Just a really deep appreciation of Jack's art. Now, what about the handling on this deck? I'm not gonna lie, it's not good. You know, expert playing cards, they usually handle pretty well, but I will say with the golding, these just clump really, really badly. So they're not gonna be one they're gonna fan particularly well. I mean, you can see there, I got huge clumps on each one. So they're not gonna fan particularly well, but honestly, that kind of gets into what would this deck be used for. I think, you know, if there's I struggle to call it a weakness of this deck, but I think as a reality, if you're considering a deck like this, look, it's gonna be an art deck first and last. You're not gonna be able to use it for pretty much anything else. It's not gonna be all that great for cardistry. With that gilding there, it clumps so much that it doesn't handle especially well. The finish is fine, but the gilding really keeps it kind of clumping together. So it's not gonna handle especially well for cardistry. And then for gameplay or anything, or magic, those backs are kind of hard to read with the full bleed imagery and the highly detailed imagery. It's hard to read the suits. There's no pips in the center. So it's really not going to be a great deck for magic or gameplay either. But for art, it is one of the best. I mean, every single card has a uniquely drawn image that you can go deeply into. So it's a really just absolutely beautiful deck as an art deck. Limited use for anything else. So I think that's just something to be aware of. You know, it's not going to be a deck for everybody for that reason, but for me, it is an absolutely stunning deck. Now, one extra little footnote to this campaign and to this deck, when he printed it, there was actually a mistake on the first printing, and they printed some of these with, instead of that gold gilding, they printed it with silver gilding instead. Now, rather than let those cards go to waste, Jack bought those up and made a second deck, which is kind of, call it an error deck, but it was done in silver gilding instead of gold. And he paired that with adding a silver foiled tuck to keep it unique. So this is a second one. So you'll see here the gold and the silver side by side. They're very similar, but now the foiling on this one's done in silver instead. Another one, also limited to 1,000. This one won't be reprinted, but he included this one along with all of the other ones. So everybody who bought one of the gold decks, he also sent a silver deck. So nice little extra touch and footnote, and also really in keeping with the mission of being environmentally friendly. So once these were printed, he didn't want them to go to waste. He wanted to keep them out there. And so he went ahead, printed them, bought them up, and then included those in the Kickstarter campaign. So that's it for this look at Culturae Animalis. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys are interested in this, I'll put a link down in the bottom to Jack's Instagram. You can absolutely reach out to him there. He does have more of these available, so you can pick these up. He'll ship these from Japan to you. Absolutely recommend checking him out if you are a collector of high-level art decks. This is one that you really just got to have in your collection. So that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed Culturae Animalis. I certainly did. Subscribe for more deck reviews and unboxings. Let me know what else you want to see, and I'll see you for the next one.